Does it look like it's being recorded? Perfect.
It is being recorded.
All right. Just so everyone knows, you are being recorded. Welcome to part 1 of how to DIY hunt caribou in Alaska. You guys still see the screen all right? And it is the presentation?
Good to go.
Perfect. Awesome. I'm Trevor Hubbs. I manage the Armed Forces Initiative. My co-presenter tonight, or staff member that is helping me present, is Sean McCarthy, who is our chapter chair. One of the things the Armed Forces Initiative does is we do something called a dual skills camp, which is a little bit of how to hunt and a little bit of why to hunt. So we kind of trick our participants into learning about conservation by taking them hunting and fishing in different parts of the world. So one of the things we're doing this year is, instead of just doing that for 10 participants at a time, we're going to host these what we're calling lunch and learn classes and put them on YouTube and just open them up to the whole BHA membership. So even if you didn't get selected for an event, you still get all the classroom stuff, and ideally you can learn enough from that to go repeat these experiences on your own. So tonight, DIY Alaska Part 1, we are going to talk a little bit about preparation. And then a week from tonight, we're going to talk about, what do we say? Oh, we're doing planning, preparation, execution, and recovery phase of the 4 phases we're going to go over in these 3 parts. This is very informal. Ask a lot of questions. We're probably going to go off on a tangent and tell some stories that will have some benefits to you, but yeah, this is what we're doing tonight. So I'm really excited about this slideshow. It took more effort than it was worth just to put this video in here, but I like it.
Absolutely. The video kind of puts it into perspective on the smoothness of the ground up there. And this area here was actually really smooth in comparison to where we started.
Yeah, and it looks like we're just like moseying along, and I promise it's taken all of our effort to work through this tundra stuff. But in that video, and for the purposes of this trip, I'm not allowed. BHA is a staunch, like, we can't tell you the zone we were in. We can't tell you the name of the river because there's some spot burning stuff. But I can tell you we are 277 miles north of the Arctic Circle, and we are about 33 miles south of the Arctic Ocean. So I've just narrowed it down to about 4 degrees latitude. Where are we at here? All right. First, you need to thank our sponsors. If you need gear, or you think you need gear, or you want to know what gear we used on this trip, this is what we used. These companies give generously to backcountry hunters and anglers and to the Armed Forces Initiative. We couldn't do any of these trips without them. Running through Grundens, I know Grundens is known for like their fly fishing, and even more so for their like Pacific Northwest commercial, like fishermen's bibs and coats. And we kind of had free run of the outdoor backcountry companies for rain gear on this trip. We knew we were going to need it, and everybody told us go to Grundens. We did. Grundens supplied everybody who went on the trip with a free set of bibs and a raincoat, and it looked like the same stuff you'd be using like on an offshore fishing charter in the North Atlantic or something. But man, the stuff worked great. Gastronome, really good food. We'll talk about this. We should have probably brought about 33% more food than we did. Not that we ever ran out, but extra calories, even more so than we thought we would need. We would need extra calories. Seek Outside, they gave us a couple of tents. They're a pretty good company, very lightweight tents. Had some issues that we'll talk about, but that's more user error than on the company. Stone Glacier packs, they gave us some free packs, which I really enjoy because I like Stone Glacier, made in America. Good little kit. Onyx Hunt, everybody knows about Onyx now. If you are a brand new hunter angler, whether you're hunting in Alaska or Florida, you should probably get Onyx. And congratulations for attending this little presentation in person. Because you're an attendee, if you could prove to me that you're a BHA member, you will get a free 1-month subscription to Onyx to try it out. You'll get that not this week, not next week, but the 3rd week after all of them are done. I will send everybody your code for a free Onyx if you attend any one of the 3. Vortex Optics, they give us about 30 grand worth of optics a year. Pretty great company. FHF Gear was our first sponsor. Bino harnesses, turkey call stuff, all kinds of great things. The big one is Pristine Ventures. This is a veteran-owned company out of Alaska. You'll see a big part of what we did in a boat-based hunt was floating a river, and you can't float a river without rafts. This is a company that lets you rent rafts with the life jackets, the pumps, the paddles, everything you need to make that raft into a meat hauling machine. Couldn't have done it without Pristine Ventures. Highly recommend if you're going to try and replicate this version of a caribou hunt, because you can do it a couple different ways. But if you want to replicate this version, or you want to do a boat-based hunt for even moose or something like that, and you're in like the northern half of Alaska, Pristine Ventures is your people. Moving on. So, table of contents. I know this is a 3-part class, and we have 4 phases here. Stay with me. Tonight, we're going to go through the planning phase. We're going to talk about tags, travel, where to hunt. Next week, we're going to go through the preparatory phase. And then the 3rd week, we're going to go through execution and recovery phase all at once. 1, because recovery phase is a pretty short phase, and 2, because execution phase is a very long phase. But we're going to keep it pretty free form, and we'll see what happens. So first one is the planning phase. Also, all these pictures came from us in the field in Alaska. You'll see some of it looks just ridiculously what's the word there? Like
Jovial.
Jovial, like the opposite of professional. And it was. It's this is just real dudes trying to figure out how to put some caribou in the cooler. So if you see some stuff that you're like, that looks janky as hell, it's because it is janky as hell.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
But we made it work. The whole concept of this class, for me, why I wanted to put it on is this is how to do Alaska on a budget. If you don't have a budget and you're very well off and you've made a lot of the right decisions in life financially, this may not be for you. But if you are a BHA member, just statistically, you're kind of into that DIY, let me try and go find my own adventure, find my own backcountry, this is the class for you. Obviously, for this purposes of our trip, we take members of the military community out. It was at no cost to our participants. But if we wanted to break it down, we did a cost breakdown. It would be $1,752 per person, which is not all that much more than going on an out-of-state elk hunt in Montana, Utah, Idaho, something like that. So it's very achievable for just your standard whitetail dude from Virginia. Like this doesn't have to be a once in a lifetime, I guess is the point. But yeah, so planning phase. Oh, if you have questions, you can either unmute yourself and just key up the mic and jump in, or there's like a little hand raise button somewhere. But yeah, just feel free to interrupt. Let's see, next slide. Yeah. Choosing. We skip one? No. All right.
Nope. There you go. Where to hunt.
Choosing where to hunt. Sean, why don't you take this one? We'll just switch off.
Yeah. So Alaska, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out Alaska leads the nation in the amount of public land up there. So there's a lot. There's a few different herds up there. We were hunting north of the Brooks Range, so North Brooks herd. There's also a porcupine bird herd. There's central Yukon herd. There's a lot of information on the herds and where those herds are at. We were hunting basically on the verge of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in that general area. Tons and tons and tons of public land. I would tell you that there's zero cell reception up there. So a plug for Onyx and preloading your maps. Do that ahead of time. Everything looks the same. You'll start seeing some of these pictures as we go through here. Once you're on the tundra and you're out of the hill country and away from the mountains, everything looks the same. So it's real easy to get twisted around. There's not really that many landmarks. Different areas up there, river systems, you may have some cliffs and whatnot to judge off of, but I wouldn't plan on having landmarks unless, you're near a road. So I would start off, for example, something that's really gotten to be pretty popular. It doesn't take a lot to figure it out. Jumping on YouTube is the Haul Road. You'll see pictures of us going up on the Haul Road. The Haul Road is a road essentially from Fairbanks to the Arctic Ocean. It's also called the Dalton Highway. That's the proper name. It is anything but highway. I'm not going to call it a 2-track, but it's certainly not a highway. It's pretty brutal. You can't necessarily take every rental vehicle up there. There's specific rental companies that can take you up there. But something worth noting, on that Haul Road, there's a buffer 5 miles either side of it that's archery only. So there are ways that you can hunt rifle from there, but you're planning on walking 5 miles straight before you get into a rifle zone, and that 5 miles is going to be brutal. So depending on where you're at. So they say 3-to-1 tundra miles to standard lower 48 mile. And I think that's pretty pretty solid. I would plan on preloading maps. I would obviously give yourself, this is one of those hunts where you want to give yourself option A, option B, option C. The Alaskan Fish and Game website is really good, gives really good data on the herds. The bios up there are awesome. They're very open to give you health of the herd. You can take a look at what the harvest was, for the last 10 years. You can see, kind of get an idea from there. As far as finding places to hunt, if you find where they're at and the time in which you're going to be there. So we were there the second best time of the year, which was that last week of August. The season's, I think, predominantly August 1st through the end of September, if I recall. The first choice would have been, I think, that first week in September. Even though it opens August 1st, it is very buggy. I've heard the bugs up there are really bad, and they'll hit you pretty hard and almost change your DNA. So we chose not to do that. I'm glad we did. With that, the herds just they're not even when we were there, they weren't quite built up in what you see in that classic big push of multiple hundreds and hundreds of animals. I think the most anybody saw at any given time was maybe five caribou together, maybe six. That was it. So maybe a week later that would have changed, but the weather would have changed as well. So tags, tickets, permits, whatnot. So tags are pretty, if you're looking to hunt out west, Alaska is actually pretty good for caribou. Caribou is a good one to start out on. So the reason I say that is I'm an avid mule deer hunter. I've hunted pronghorn a little bit, and I will tell you it's pretty relatable to both in that you're in pretty big country as long as you're not in mountainous country. They don't spook. They don't spook as easy. And you can see them way off, and it's pretty easy to put a spot and stalk on them. We'll talk more about that later. There's plenty of them. There's plenty of access. Certain units, I think the unit that we were in now has changed to allow 2 out-of-state resident tags for caribou, which is pretty cool. Last year was only 1. So prices. So a price for a non-resident annual hunting license in Alaska is $160. If you're on a river system and you want to fish for the week that you're there, it goes up by another $45 to $205. Over the counter, you don't have to put a draw in for the majority of caribou hunts up there, and you don't need a guide. That's another huge plus. So if you want to go up and you want to brown bear hunt, or you want to moose hunt or sheep hunt, whatnot, those you require a guide. Caribou, you do not. So caribou is $650 for the tag, and we were in wolf country. Wolf tag was $60. So you can spend as little as $810 or up to $915 if you chose that wolf tag. Sorry, I've got a lab that decides it's ball time. So $810 to $915. It's pretty doable. I've seen elk tags in the West go for more than that. Now you're getting hunting, fishing, and 2 animals out of it. The over-the-counter areas, that's very explainable up there, and you can also see that in Onyx. You can pull that up. There is a lot of access there. You don't have to rely on major highways. Dalton is not a major highway. There's a lot of 2 tracks in the area. There is a lot of ORV access up there. If you go on YouTube, you'll see a lot of folks hunting ORV. This isn't a dig on Alaska at all. Even the Alaskans up there told us to be on the lookout for it. There is a lot of road hunting up there. It's just so big. I mean, from Fairbanks north to where we kind of inserted was greater than 14 hours, if that gives you any kind of inclination, between stops and everything. And there were a lot of side roads. We saw quads, side-by-sides. There's dudes on dirt bikes, mountain bikes, whatever. So access is it's not hard. It's super easy. Onyx does a really good job with that. As a matter of fact, we were pretty much in a roadless area, and Onyx showed extremely old exploration paths, or I forgot what they were called. and I actually came across the remnants of one. The tundra took it over, but there for a short stretch, we actually had some pretty solid ground a few miles in to walk on. So, yeah, next slide. Unless you have something to add.
No, you're good. The biggest one here is just plan to spend an hour clicking around that Alaska Department of Fish and Game website. They have an app you can download as well. It's super friendly, like much easier to navigate than like, not to poke fun at like Utah's or Montana's or Wyoming's, but we're doing a Wyoming pronghorn hunt for a bunch of participants this year. It was much easier to talk people through Alaska Caribou than Wyoming pronghorn. So it's very doable. Just the amount of biological information they have on there, and you click on the little caribou button, is just crazy.
They give a ton. I mean, there's links on how to break these animals down, what's expected, and all that with really good videos. They do a fabulous job up there.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's shows you what right looks like. So especially if you've never done it before, like Alaska has a weird rule where it all has to stay on the bone until it gets to the place where you are butchering. It's like out of the field, including your rib racks, it was new for me, new for a lot of places and not a lot of people, but it was interesting. Let's see, where are we at here?
They're very strict on their want and waste laws up there. We went in, there was an outfitter who was allowing hunters to basically process their game there. That was not their final destination. They call it very black and white in their rules, and I think they were like $1,000 a ticket. So we watched $8,000 worth of tickets be written.
Yeah, and that outfitter is gonna have to go to court and try and maintain his outfitting license. It's because it was not his first offense, but yeah. So the biggest thing is, first thing, over-the-counter areas like Sean hit. That's the first thing you need to look at for when you're starting your planning hunt. Once you've chosen an over-the-counter area, oh, come on, where are we at? Boom, there we go. Next, you need to start booking your travel. So if you're already in Alaska, you are stationed at Elmdorf-Richardson or whatever, or you live up there, if you retired up there, not as big a deal. If you are traveling from the States, the first thing is still a transporter. So whether you live in Alaska or you're traveling to Alaska just for this hunt, you need a transporter. So while we said this is not a non-guided opportunity, a transporter is somebody who is paid to take you to and from the field. So if you wanted to park your rental van on the side of the Dalton Highway and walk 5 miles in, set up a little camp with your little lightweight Seek tent and hunt with a rifle from there, or if you want to take archery equipment and hunt the 5-mile buffer zone, then you won't need a transporter. But what we did for the purposes of this trip, and you can do this in a bunch of different ways. You can do this for moose, you can do it for caribou, you can even do it for muskox in a lot of places. But we hired somebody, like we deflated all of our rafts, packed them in a boat, like an airboat. We hired a person to take us on that airboat 33 miles upriver against the current and basically just drop us off. Then we inflated our rafts and floated out. So that person who drove us upriver and dropped us off is called a transporter. Now, there's a very legal definition of what a transporter can and can't do. For example, they can't tell you, oh, I've seen caribou here in the past week, so we're going to go here. They're going to ask you some questions that you have to have specific answers for. And they don't even necessarily have to be, I don't want to say they don't have to be the right answers, but don't feel like, I guess what I'm trying to prevent here is you're going to call 4 or 5 transporters and just Google transporters in whatever hunt zone you've selected. They exist. They're out there on Google. They're on Facebook. They're super friendly to talk to. Cheapest price we got was like $200 a person. Most expensive price was like $1,000 a person. So it just depends on how far in advance of the season you are and what that person has space left for. That's why you book them first, because they're going to fill up first. But
I think for our sake, we were booking those guys around January, correct?
So technically we did not get locked in until March. Like I made a verbal commitment in January, and then I had to wait for some funds to come in via grants to pay them. But yeah, you were getting them locked in about at least 6 months ahead of your trip. So, but that's what I was going to say is he can't tell you where caribou are, or she. There's a couple female transporters out there as well. But so when you ask, like they're going to ask, hey, where do you want to be dropped off on the river? And if you say something like wherever the caribou are, they're going to get real cagey. And they're just going to say, I don't know. I haven't seen any caribou. Like If they're telling you where caribou are, that might be a red flag for you. Like they probably just trying to be a good dude, but they're not legally allowed to do that. That constitutes guiding. It's so if they get real cagey when you say, I don't know, wherever you think is best, just know that's why they're getting cagey. You need to pick a spot, and they will get you as close as they can. So when they asked us, and I know this because I made that mistake, and he's like, I can't tell you that. You need to pick a spot on this river. And I was like, so I said, get me as far from the put in as possible and as close to the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge as I can get. And that's how we ended up in the campsite we were in. And we tried like 2 or 3 campsites when we were up this river and trying to look for one that wouldn't flood because it's a glacial fed river. It's known to raise a couple feet in a day. It snowed while we were out there. Water went from ankle deep to thigh deep over a period of hours. And that's all stuff you don't have to know. Like, he's not going to drop you off at like a 10-digit grid and hold you to that. If it's a shitty spot, he'll move you a couple miles up or down the river, right? It's his job to make sure you have a good time, but he can't make that decision based on where he has seen caribou. So what I did is I picked 4 spots: primary, secondary, tertiary, and emergency campsite, and we just cruised the river looking until we could get to what looked the best. But anyway, that's your transporter. That's what you want to book first, and you're going to book it for the whole group. So what I recommend doing this trip as is a group of 4. No, not less. Like, don't go by yourself, especially if it's your first time. But a group of 4 would be perfect. And we'll get more into exactly why 4 in the future. But 4, you're not renting a huge rental car to go up the Dalton. And if you live in Alaska, you may still want to rent a car to go up the highway and not use your personal vehicle. It's pretty rough if you're going to beat something up. You probably don't want to own it. But but anyway, so with 4 people, you could split that rental car price, which we're going to get into here in a second. But and makes the rafts a little easier to manage. But anyway, all right. So next thing after your transporter is your airline selection. I flew Delta Airlines. And Sean, you flew Alaska?
I did. So
yeah.
I live in the Seattle area, so Alaska is an obvious choice. I would say the lion's share of folks going to Alaska, either their equipment, their food, their gear, or themselves will fly through SeaTac. So it's pretty common. Baggage fees, they can get you pretty hard with the baggage fees. Trevor has a pretty good experience with getting a reduced fee. So if you want to do something slick, what you can do ahead of time with a lot of airlines is you can apply for their credit card ahead of time, and that usually gives you a first bag free, and they may reduce bag fees from there. So in my case, first bag was $35 without it. Second bag was $45. Third bag's $150. And then there's a overweight charge. So anything in that 51 to 100 pounds or oversized, and they have certain dimensions. It says like 63 to 115 inches linear. That's going to be 100 to 150 bucks depending on weight or size. I will tell you, if you are military on orders going up there, or military going TAD, or anything, like, you're going to fly free. Your bags will fly free to and from if you're going to do that. So if you can get a TAD conference up there at the same time that you're up there, hint, all that stuff, including your meat and trophy parts and all that, can fly home. So I think to double back real quick with the transporter, it is a really good recommendation to ask that individual what they recommend for packing in their, let's assume it's an airboat, what they recommend packing in their airboat. If you've got less people, we saw guys on that river just have their stuff in big Rubbermaid totes, and they spiked from camp. We wanted to be a little bit more mobile, so our stuff was all in wet bags, and we'll wind up talking later on down the road with gear. But ask them what they recommend for gear, and they're probably going to tell you something like the best rain gear you can buy, the best boots you can buy, the best glass that you can buy. Expect to be wet, expect to be cold, or expect to be eaten alive by mosquitoes. And you're going to hear that from almost everyone, regardless of where you go in Alaska.
Yeah, they take it seriously, like the whole wet and cold thing, a lot more serious than we were taking it in August, and that's because they live there and they know what they're doing. On the airline, I learned that if you book a first class ticket, I get 3 bags on Delta for free, no matter what the size and weight. So I upgraded myself to a first class ticket on the way home and ended up saving like $300. So it's worked out because you've got your gun case, which is your flyable, lockable, whatever brand hard case you prefer. That's one checked bag. You've got at least one duffel bag full of stuff, full of clothes, gear, whatever. And then on the way home, you're going to have at least one cooler or fish box. A fish box is kind of like a very temporary cooler. You can buy them at Walmart for it was like $12 or something.
Yeah, depending on the size, anywhere from like 12 to $30. They got them at Walmart. They've got them at Sportsman's Warehouse up there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then if you don't want to, if you're not getting a shoulder mount, which I know it's probably, if it's going to be your first caribou, everybody wants that shoulder mount. The Euro mount is going to work out a lot better for you for the first one, unless you truly get a Boone and Crockett. I mean, do whatever you want, but count that Euro mount skull, that clean skull wrapped in a trash bag, as another checked bag that will be over the size limit. Anyway,
they are strict on that. When you're coming back, your meat has got to be sealed up and it can't leak. So in those fish boxes with a big leaf bag around it on the inside, and they seal up. Those guys ship meat all the time. And your skull, hide, anything like that, it's got to be sealed up to prevent leakage. So I would double, triple bag, roll of duct tape per head if you can afford it. Tennis balls at the tips of the antlers to kind of protect it. There's a lot of videos out there that we kind of fell back on to use for an example for that.
Yeah. So all right. So with the transporter, with our tags, where were we at, Sean? Like $750 for the tags.
Yeah, so 810 on the cheapest end for tags.
Yeah, $810. And then we flew like red eye midnight super flights where it was like $600 for that. And then for our flights with our like baggage and all that shit, because again, I flew first class or whatever, which is most of our stuff. So I think we're at like $1,200 to $1,400, somewhere like that. Next thing we got to book is our travel from the airport to the hunting area. That's one of like 4 different rental companies that will allow you to drive on the Dalton. And I know you're like, that's ridiculous, Trevor. There's more than 4. I can just do whatever I want. It's none of their business. I promise they will track you. There are dudes up on the Dalton who, like locals or whatever, will see you in an certified rental vehicle. Like if you like decide to rent a U-Haul or a Home Depot truck and drive it up there, they will report your license to Home Depot and you will get a hefty fine. They're not friendly to that kind of stuff. So anyway, we went with Alaska 4x4, which is an all right company. I don't think it's any better, any worse than the other ones. We were a little limited because we needed a 12-person van or the ability to move a large amount of people, meat, and gear. If you're in that 4-person group, you could honestly get away with, I don't want to say like a Prius, but like a full-size car or a small SUV, and you could be strapping shit to the roof.
Yeah, ideally. And I've talked to people that have done a similar hunt since, with 4 guys, and they wound up doing the archery hunt, and they got a crew cab pickup, and they bought some tarps up there, and they actually used the pickup to get height of eye that they were glassing off the top of the truck and whatnot. So that's a good way to go. I would go back if I were to do it again. That's probably the route I would take. Go back.
Well, that was our. That was my backup option for the for like $400 more than the 12-passenger van. I could have done 3 full-size pickup trucks and just split us up into 3 trucks. That was my backup option. But yeah, so there's a lot of moving parts. The logistics is the biggest hurdle for the hunting in Alaska, even when you live in Alaska. The other thing you're going to find, is if you've never dealt with Alaskans before, is I think the best way to describe it, they're going to sound like they have no idea what they're talking about and they're just so laissez-faire about it, it's going to drive you nuts. But I think the biggest way to don't go where you want to go. You go where Alaska lets you go. And the Alaskans know that. And they're just like so non-committal to shit because I think they know that like that there's no use committing fully to any one plan at any time ever. So like they'll just be like, yeah, I mean, show up today, tomorrow, whenever. It's like, well, no, I want to pick it up in 4 hours. Yeah, today, tomorrow, whenever. Like they're just very relaxed and kind of goofy and like that. And it's because, You could be in August and you get 4 inches of snow and the river rises 3 feet. And now the boat won't start because you're 257 miles north of the nearest town. And shit happens. So anyway, book your rental car. I would book either an SUV or a full size truck with 4 people, and plan to just make shit work. Everything should be waterproofed. All your gear. We got like these big. You remember the brand the Alaskans had? The dudes from Eldorf Richardson.
I believe that they were using NRS. I believe they were using NRS bags. Are you talking for bags?
Yeah, so they had these big wet weather bags that they were just dumping their rucksack or whatever and all their gear into this giant bag, zipping it, rolling the top and calling it good. And that was their just like beat the shit out of bag for the boat, for the car, for everything. And you knew everything in there was going to be dry. The rest of us used these Cabela's Boundary Waters bags, which is a much more inexpensive version of that big bag. And it worked just fine. We had a couple guys whose thing got pretty dinged up through checking the bag through customs or whatever, baggage handling, where it's just like getting scraped to shit, but still held up. So,
yeah, I would say, not to go down the gear rabbit hole, but I would say a big wet bag duffel, not a stuffed duffel like a sea bag, but an actual duffel that opens all the way up, put your pack, all that stuff in there. It wraps up super tight, super compact, is probably the way to go. It is kind of a monster to handle at the airport. So just go rent one of those little carts and get it around.
Yep, I agree. But so for our purposes in the van, we had almost everything we could fit in the van, and then fortunately we were able to borrow a trailer from one of the Alaska residents that was up there with us, and we packed everything else on the trailer, like just a little whatever that was, an 8x10 short little trailer.
Yeah, it was just a little trailer. I would tell you, if you're going to do a do-it-yourself and rent a vehicle, I would invest in tarps.
Yeah.
Plan on getting tarps if you're not going to bring tarps with you. I would plan on getting tarps up there. I would plan on getting a fuel can or two, because if you do that specific hunt, once you get out of the cities, there's no gas anywhere, so you're going to top off on the side of the road until you get to the next spot.
So that's a great point. When you do your rental car, all these options, they'll give you like an off-road option. I don't know if they call it off-road. I'm sure that different places have different things they call it, but it'll include like 2 extra spare tires instead of 1, a jack, 2 fuel cans. Definitely take it. It's like an extra $50 for the rental. At a minimum, you'll use the fuel cans. So we filled up our full tank and 2 5-gallon fuel cans in Fairbanks, and you got to go get from Fairbanks to Coldfoot before there's another stop for gas. That's where you got to get to. So in Coldfoot, we filled up our tank again, and then we went from Coldfoot to where we entered into the river and met with that transporter, hunted for 8 days, got back to where the transport in the van was, filled the van up using the fuel cans, and that was just enough. Like I think we had enough. We had like maybe 100 gallons or 100 miles of spare fuel to get back to over the pass to Coldfoot, because that's the other thing is there's a pass on that mountain that could have you stopped up for whatever. Like weather plays a major factor, but we'll get there. Dalton Highway restrictions. We kind of talked about that.
Nowhere all the emergency gear is in your vehicle.
Yes.
When we go up there, unfortunately we had a breakdown on the way, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're going to get broken down. And we didn't know where the triangles were. We didn't have road flares. When it gets dark there, it's dark. I mean, real dark. So food for thought. Got to know where that stuff's at. If you have some high vis and stuff like that to kind of, shine yourself when you're stepping out of the vehicle up there, because there's no curb, there's no ditch to kind of ease into.
Yeah,
it's the road and tundra. That's it.
It's that's a picture you see there is actually us stopped on the side of the road for 29 hours because our rental car broke through no fault of our own.
Nope. We've been found innocent.
We have been found innocent after months of litigation. But anyway, all right. We got 30 minutes left, Sean. You just want to keep going?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
So what
I
else?
think that we're not going to run out of information. So
No. I would say, okay, so initial prep, another thing to think about, because we talked about it, basic gear, getting yourself to there. I will tell you, hotels up there are pretty expensive. I would
oh yeah,
figure out
yeah,
a
hit that.
base of operations. So one idea, and this is a very cheap option, and it's done quite a bit, is people will rent a storage unit for a month,
Yes.
and they use that is kind of a base of operations to keep their clothes and their gear and all those things that they're going to wear to and from the airport, their civvies, whatnot. And they also use it as a place to butcher and all that when they come back. Um, there are a couple of locations. I'll speak to Fairbanks. I think there was 2 locations within Fairbanks that you could arrange for freezer space ahead of time, and I think they do daily rentals. But obviously, your meat's got to be in meat bags. It's got to be clean. It's got to be properly tagged, properly marked, and all that. But you're still going to have to process that game for transport. So I think if a group of guys went in and got a storage unit or maybe a vacation rental for a day on either end, maybe that would work. But understand, Alaska will throw a curveball, and you may not be able to travel on that day, either
Yeah.
to or from. You may get held up, especially if you're taking flights. Like if we were to do this and fly into the Brooks, I've heard of people literally sitting on the tarmac for 3 days before they can get off and get up to
Yeah.
hunt. So food for thought.
No, definitely.
Um,
That's the biggest thing with 4 people. So we priced it up. Let's go over what we did so far. All right, you bought your tags. You
eight,
have
10.
bought your
Yeah.
transporter. You have rented your vehicle. You have allowed your whatever extra fee for gas cans and shit, and you've rented a storage unit. That's the cheapest way to do it. That puts us at like 1650, if I remember correctly. There's a slide in here that you guys will see that breaks all the prices down, but puts us at like 1650 so far. Now, the only thing that we don't have included right now is extra gear,
Right. Yeah,
like
I
so
would.
if yeah, go ahead. So if you're like a Virginia whitetail hunter, you may have to spend a little bit more money because you got to buy some gear. If
Right,
you are
right.
already a elk hunter, pronghorn hunter, something in the West, where you've already owned a pair of boots, you already have a backpack, you already have a rifle that you're comfortable with, um, then you don't really have to spend too much extra money other than like your dehydrated food. And most of the folks I know have a couple of those on hand anyway. But
Yeah, I would. The other, excuse me, the other things you're going to look at
oh,
purchasing while you're up there
yes,
is wait until you come back. You're probably going to need some garbage bags. You're going to need tape, stuff like that, to wrap up your meat. Prior to going up, I would definitely get you all my stuff. As far as if I'm going to speak to somebody from the Midwest or East that hasn't hunted hard out west, you don't need a lot of special gear, but what you do need is good gear. Um, I I'm a big fan. I live in the Pacific Northwest. It's really wet here. It was very wet up there, even on days where we weren't supposed to get it. Everything's saturated. So, like an all-weather boot, a taller all-weather boot, you're going to need footwear with really good arch support and ankle support because that tundra, everything is very uneven, and we'll talk more about that in the next episode. And rain gear, those Grundens are clutch. I've hunted in Grundens and there's another. I look like the Gordon's fisherman if I tree stand hunt for blacktail up here. They work really well. First Light, their heavier rain gear is really good. Kuyu makes a really good set of rain gear. So I would plan on, if there was any one thing that I said that I would buy for this trip, and I had to save some money for it, it would probably be good rain gear, good boots, and good binos. So
yeah,
shot opportunities out there. Speaking from rifle, they can be really far out there. But for example, Ryan and I, in that opening video, you saw the 2 of us walking with caribou. We spotted those caribou at 1,960 yards, and we snuck to 150 before things went Western, and one caribou dropped at 190 and the other dropped at 350. So it is entirely feasible to get within 400 yards of caribou there, even though it's relatively flat and benign. So I would practice out to 400 yards and be comfortable with that. Archery is a different monster. You are not going to get close enough for comfort, in my opinion, archery, but guys do it, and they hunt right by the pipeline. Like, I've seen so many videos of guys using the pipeline and walking around the pipeline, which is right there along the road, to stalk in on caribou. But I think your average archery shot is 60 to 75 yards. So keep that in mind. It's not your typical tree stand, within 30-yard archery shot up there whatsoever. And there's a lot of weather variables. There's always a breeze, plan wind, plan snow. I mean, we saw everything from snow to just shy or right at 60, I think, and sunny during the week that we were there.
Yeah, for what, the 20 minutes that it was 60 sunny?
Yeah. Hey, I had a caribou on my back for that, so it was great.
Yeah, no, that's the weather is dynamic. You'll see this picture. We're prepping, so there's a lot of public ranges up there. We took advantage of it to send a couple rounds downrange, just at some boxes and some paper targets after we all landed, just to make sure we were on. When I do these AFI dual skills camps, I have a hard limit at 400 yards for big game. I know there are dudes that will shoot further than that. There's a lot of folks that are more talented than myself, but I also have folks that have never shot at distance before. Like, maybe they were an engineer or they were a truck driver or something, and that's not what they did in the military. I tell people to be comfortable at 400 yards and be comfortable being uncomfortable. That's the biggest piece. If you want to take home one tip that'll help you do this, besides all the logistical stuff, is every moment of every day, part of you will be cold and wet, no matter what. Best rain gear, $60 pair of mittens from First Light, great mittens, but you're still going to be cold and wet. Part of you will always be cold and wet. But anyway, let's get into the preparation phase. So we have spent 90% of our money at this point.
This stop right here is probably one of the most important stops you can do. Go sight your rifle in ahead of time, and I would recommend throwing an extra target or two in your truck to sight in when you get all the way up, because I don't care how well you secure your stuff, you are going to get jostled and bounced around. And we had a guy, I think his rifle was off. He had an issue when he landed in the plane. We got him squared away, and his rifle got knocked. The poor guy, his rifle got knocked off on the way up there.
Yeah, it's this gentleman in the beard, the brown beard, not the gray beard that you see third from the right, technically, next to Sean in the picture. But him missing is the only reason I got a caribou. So that's a rough deal for him. If you don't subscribe to our YouTube channel, go subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Do it.
And watch a video about it, because we were pretty detailed in our meticulous recording of this incident. But all right, so preparation phase. Let's talk about gear. I know we've been hitting gear. Let's hit this gear pretty hard, Sean, and then let's call it an evening for this section.
No, that sounds good.
Yeah. So like we said, this was a boat-based trip. So any of this stuff you could break down. Like, if you don't want stuff in a boat, you decide, hey, I'm just going to spend an extra $5,000, give or take 4,500 to $5,000. Instead of renting a car, I'm going to fly from Fairbanks and to one of these northern slope lakes or something, and then get put down and picked up a week later. Totally fine. You just won't have this boat section. You'll still have a day pack, a dry bag, and on your person stuff, but it's flexible. And you don't feel the need to screenshot and do all this stuff. This whole thing is going to go on YouTube in 3 weeks. It'll be on YouTube all together, and all of these packing lists will be in blog posts on the AFI website. So they will exist forever in perpetuity, and you can go look at them. But Sean, walk us through the boat.
Yeah. So boat, you should get all that with when you pick your boats up. Make sure that you take a look at the boat when you get it. Talk to whoever you're getting that boat from to make sure that you've got everything. The first thing's probably one of the most important, and that's extra paddles. If I were to move to Alaska, I would probably buy a raft, because there's so much up there. These rafts are super cool. I'd be a raft guy, no doubt about it. Throw bag is huge. Rope is big. You're going to need to tie that off. And lashing system. So if you look at this picture here, what we're actually doing there is strapping everything down. Assume that you're going to roll over. I don't know how you could, to be honest with you. It's not like a kayak. These things are really stable. The more weight you get into them, the more stable they get. However, the harder they are to maneuver. So when you're renting them, I would ask for as many ratchet straps as he would give you. And we used ratchet straps or pull straps all over that thing. You need to have a PFD on you. Make sure your PFD, like you can see, I think you can see Ryan. So over on the right-hand side, under the on person column, he's got his PFD on inside of his rain gear. Just make sure you got it on there and got it on there secure. If it's going to go inside, make sure it's super secure so you're not choking yourself up when you go over. The same thing that you're going to have on you throughout is keep a compass, a whistle, and some sort of way to start fire on your boat. Now, where we're at this location, you can actually see there is some brush. There's these little willow-like trees there. That's not the norm on a lot of your further out river systems. So don't necessarily plan on having a fire every night. And that's specific to the boat. Whoever you lease that from, they should have all that stuff, but I would definitely ensure before I left that I've got, have a pump and a patch kit. Those are on there. So be able to pump it up. And we did have to do a patch. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Everything's rock up there. Everything's sharp. Everything will hurt you. So as far as your day pack, you don't need a huge bag. There were guys that were looking to bring like a huge bag, like a 7,000 cubic inch bag. You don't need that at all. You can get away with like a 2,000 cubic inch in that ballpark bag, for hunting, because everything else is primarily going to stay at camp. However, in your day pack, you should have the ability to make fire. I would not leave without rain gear at all. I would have extra food. I would also have the means, and this is something I think we all learned the hard way. I would have the means to, if I didn't pack extra water, which I should have, I would have the means to purify more water, because you're going to wind up exerting yourself on what's relatively easy ground more than what you expect, and you're going to take in more water than what you're used to. Even if you've got a pretty strong workout regimen, I would definitely bring, whether it be a pump or a gravity bag in my pack every time. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
wouldn't
Just
leave without
a
it.
quick, we measured this. So with like on a trip to go get meat, so all we had was extra water, snacks, and like what's it called, game bags, like empty packs otherwise, because we're just going up to make a trip to haul extra meat. We averaged 1 mile an hour.
Yep.
With reasonably empty packs. With full packs, fully loaded down with meat, we were averaging less than a half mile an hour.
Yeah,
Like at one point, Tom, who is a full-time, I don't know, he's not sheriff's deputy. Is he city police?
No, he's Spokane County deputy. He's also a SWAT team lead. So the dude, he's an in shape dude.
A fit dude. And then another dude at Alaska, U.S. Army paratrooper, had been in Alaska for 2 years, like used to the tundra. We're at hey, 50 steps, take a break. 50 steps, take a break for 6 miles. And it's a son of a bitch, guys. It's just don't sleep on it. Like,
it's tough. Do not underestimate it. It's worth it though. It's definitely worth it. I'd say
right on time. Physical fitness.
Yep. I would say that you're not going to need a lot of special gear. I took a stove with me. I brought an ultralight stove, and I brought a meal with me every time I went. I had plenty of lickies and chewies, as you Army guys call it. Prep phase, physical fitness. I can't emphasize enough. I shed weight for this. I'm not a big guy, but I went back to my backpacking days, and I knew that if I was a little bit lighter, it'd be a little less impactful on me. You can see this pack here. He's got weight. That's huge. I would definitely ruck, and I would ruck uncomfortable. Trevor nailed it with saying be comfortable with being uncomfortable. The pack that you're going to wear, if you've never packed weight, there's a lot of different packs out there that you can just strap on. I highly recommend, at the very least, pack with what you're going to be using, You don't have to buy like an outdoorsman's training pack that you can put metal plates on. Dumbbells, sandbags, whatever. Start off light, 20, 25 pounds. Start walking around your neighborhood, doing walks with the dogs and the kids. Definitely hit the hills. And hindsight being 2020, I was in great shape. I was doing a lot of running. I was rucking all the time. However, I was not used to the uneven terrain. And what I mean by that is there's these things called a tussock. They can be anywhere from the size of a softball to the size of like a basketball. And some of them you can trust them. Most of them you can't. It's picture like a gymnasium filled with half inflated basketballs and maybe a couple of bocce balls and maybe, I don't know, a bowling ball here and there. And then it's all in a waterbed. And some of it you can trust, some of it you can't. And that's your walking surface. So hindsight being 2020, I probably should have hit the creek beds and walk rocks. If you have clear cuts where you live, clear cuts would have been great. Side hilling a clear cut probably would have been amazing. And we got those ankles and some of those stabilizing muscles a lot better off. Lungs and legs are huge. I wouldn't focus a lot on super strong upper body strength. I would focus more on my cardio and my back and my core. And my core was my strong part. My core and my back was a strong part to this. So thankfully, when I took my pack off, I was pretty stable there. You know, shameless plug from Mountain Tough. I know Trevor did a couple of their workouts. I copied similar stuff with stuff I've done in the past. So pack weight, get uncomfortable. If you are going to hunt in August, you had better be starting to work out now in May and work out all the way through. So
Hey, Sean.
Yeah.
How far were y'all hunting from camp every day? Or what was the average?
Okay. Yeah. So
average and how far total is that's different questions.
So I think the farthest anybody got from camp was in that 6 mile range.
Yeah.
And that was a hard earned 6 miles. We were probably averaging in the 3 to 4.
So you and Ryan were at 2.7 from camp.
We were 2.7 where we shot our bulls from. However, right before that, to give you on a hill, it was 3.5 miles up to the lake where the caribou were that we didn't shoot, and it took me every bit of 5.5 hours to get up there. And we're not talking a huge elevation gain. So caribou can be right at camp too. Like on the way in, we thought it was a swing and just going to be a swing. We're going to knock caribou out and just have a joyful ride on the way out because people saw caribou crossing the river on the way up. And that was a glimmer of hope because we didn't see that the whole week that we were up there. I would plan literally from the second you step out of your tent, you're hunting. You are where they're going to be.
Yeah, it never really got dark. It got dusky. Like I never turned on my headlamp the whole time. But and you can hunt just all day and just keep looking. We saw caribou every day. We did not see the meat eater episode where there's thousands walking through the valley. We saw groups of 4, groups of 2, groups of 1, all just kind of generally moving in an eastern direction.
Yep, and you can't catch them. I don't care. You cannot. Once they decide that they're going to move, just walking. Ryan and I, our very first night, we climbed up to this spot and we were watching them walk down. And I said, "Oh, dude, we got this knoll here. We can run down the other side of it, try to get across this little draw, and cut them off." And walking, those things smoked us, and we were going downhill, moving. So, yeah, they can move, and when they decide they're going to run. Dude, they just glide over the tundra. It's the craziest looking thing. You'll see their legs kind of undulating, and that body just kind of hovers over the tundra as they just open distance from you.
Yeah, it's wild. It doesn't even look like a run. It's just a jog.
They're a weird creature. They're so cool.
This picture right here shows like when you say braided river. This is what we mean by braided river. So with your group of 4 people, you're going to have 2 rafts, right? 2 people per raft, so 2 rafts total. keep in visual sight and then mark pins on each other's onX to stop for other groups to catch up. Because if you get sideways in one of these, or you take one braid, the left braid, and the other guy goes right, like you could end up on a very different part of the river. And once you're down there, you cannot see shit. Like you're just like, you see about 5 feet when you get down to these willows. But also just a thing to notice is, well, so for example, the first place that the transporter dropped us off, like I'm glad we walked around for a few minutes before he left, because we realized we're on an island. Like hunting would have been very hard at that spot. But and you see these rivers just kind of go from everywhere, and that water is like 33 degrees. Just a fun fact.
All year
like
long.
you could see
Right.
where it was ice 10 miles ago. Like,
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah,
Talked
mark
about
pin.
that.
That's a good point. Marking pins, being able to stop with each other, communication, both verbal and nonverbal communication. Those are huge.
Yeah, but I think it being 7:58, we're gonna do some questions, and yeah, we'll do some questions, and then we'll catch you guys next week, where we'll talk a little bit more shooting, a little more physical fitness. I'm sure there's going to be some repetition, but in all three of these, but too much information to kind of just to leave aside, I guess. Like, might as well mention it. So,
Absolutely.
Anybody got any questions?
Yeah, what was the average on the cost for the boat to rent the boats?
Oh yeah, so it was like $120 per boat.
Okay.
With all the stuff, like, and
Yeah.
then and part of that, I don't want to lock that guy into a price. I mean, inflation happens, but I think we price checked him just to keep everything fair, and it was like the most expensive we got was like $250 per boat. And these are, so you could fit 4 dudes in these rafts, from weight wise you'd be okay, but if you knock 4 caribou down, or when they changed the regs this year to where you could each technically take 2 caribou, like now you're talking 8 caribou, 4 dudes, not going to work. But they are very robust rafts. They're built for 2 men and 1 moose, or 2 men and 4 caribou. I forget how they break it down, but that's how they market it, is that they're 2 man, 1 moose rafts. And they're hefty. They're good rafts, and caribou were not much bigger than a mule deer. Like, at least the ones we were shooting.
Yeah, I was going to say I looked at it, and a big bull caribou on the hoof is somewhere in that 350 pound range, if I recall. The ones we were shooting, they weren't big bulls by any stretch of the imagination, and they were the size of like a healthy mule deer. So, if that puts it into perspective for you.
Yeah, were y'all able to pretty much bring your meat back in like 250-pound coolers?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So there you go. That's kind of what we're looking at. So meat
not that much bigger than a mule deer. That's like a little
really
2.5-year-old bull caribou.
The most delicious thing ever created. So we got these fish boxes, and everybody has them up there, and they're rated. They say they'll hold 50 pounds of meat, and I think I shoved like 75 pounds of meat, give or take, in mine. And then I brought a cooler, like a backpack cooler, is a carry-on, and I shoved the rest in there. And that's why, if you can get a freeze on that stuff and throw it on dry ice, you're all that much better. And we'll talk a lot more in detail on the extraction portion of that. But
yeah, like I was trying to go ahead.
Yeah, 50 pounds per box, but I got 70, 75.
Yeah. And I did the same thing, where I brought all of my meat back in a soft cooler. Now, to be fair, we did have a host for BHA up there in Alaska that was helping us out. So I probably left a quarter of my caribou with him as a thank you for letting us like use his facilities. But I didn't actually get to freeze any of my meat. Like, my meat was still it was cold because it's Alaska and everything's cold, but it was not frozen. And I ended up getting like a 5-pound block of dry ice and sticking it in that carry-on cooler. And by the time I landed 23 hours later in Milwaukee, everything was frozen. So it worked out really well.
Anything else?
Yeah, I had one more. So for most of the transporters, like, they meet you on the Dalton Highway if you take that route, or do you?
They'll give you instructions on where to meet
They'll
you. Like you'll see there's like 7 landmarks once you clear the Adigan Pass, which is the pass over the Brooks Range, where they'll be like you'll see them on your map. You'll see them on X, but they're it's normally one of those places.
Yep.
Like you'll meet us at this pipe inspection gauge for the pipeline, which is
Yep.
really just a gravel parking lot where designed for the pipeline that now transporters have taken over, and for 2 months of the year they make their home.
And that's where you park your rental, and then they take
Yep.
over as far as transportation.
Correct. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
It's I'm gonna go ahead and stop the reporting. If there's no more questions, we're gonna stop it.
Yeah. Just curious, where are you guys seeing the 2 limit for this coming year? Because regs don't publish for like another month or 2.
I saw that it was on a man, I wish I could. It was on a podcast literally like a week or 2 ago. And it was the specific unit we were in.
Which we're not allowed to say. Stop following
allowed to say, but it's not just that unit, but that cued in. I was like, huh, I've been there.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I mean, I know the tag you guys were on for that. I just they've been a little hot and cold on closures for that, and the idea of going to a 2 seems interesting. But I like the idea. Hopefully, that means that they can leave the season open for a little longer.
But you, Patrick, as a resident up there, like you could take 5.
Yeah.
Like, so our resident Alaskans could have kept going. The one didn't because he didn't want to be that guy that comes home with 2 caribou, and we still had some people that didn't shoot
when
one.
Everyone else is still trying to get a tag.
Yeah. So, but all right, I'm going to stop the recording. We're going to keep talking, but if you want to hear what we're talking about, you're going to have to show up next time in person and not just wait on the YouTube release like a lazy person. So, stop.